When I was a kid, my cousins came to visit us in Colorado Springs, and my oldest cousin asked what all the lights were out on that field that we saw when we were driving in, and my parents told her that it was a light farm where they grew light bulbs, and she believed them. So on that note, let's talk about Power Grid. What that field of light bulbs was in actuality was an airport, which is why I'm recording this Power Grid review in an airport. Also, I just happen to be in an airport, and I need to record a review. Now, of course, I couldn't get out on the runway and film on the light bulb farm part, so we're just gonna make do with this. Power Grid is an economy game and probably the only game with paper money and little wooden houses that I actually enjoy. It's by Fredman Fries, and it's 2 to 6 players in its base game. There's several expansions now that you can buy with different maps and robots and stuff like that, but we're just going to talk about the base game, because the base game is a solid game in and of itself. It's a double-sided board with the US on one side and Germany on the other. In Power Grid, you and your friends are owning power companies, and you buy power plants for your companies, you buy the resources to fuel the power plants for the companies, and then you build substations around the map to provide power to cities and thus get paid for your, well, power. And at the end of the game, the winner is whoever can power the most cities on the final round. What this means is that even if you have built the most substations around the map, if you don't have the power plants or the fuel to actually power everything you've built, doesn't mean a lot, because the winner is the one who can actually power everything and the most things. You, as a power company, the first thing you do is you make a bid for a power plant at the beginning of the game, and this power plant will stick with you until you are managed to upgrade. But you just can't buy the power plant, you have to bid on it. So you place an opening bid, like 4 for 4, and then it goes around the table and people can up your bid and buy that power plant out from under your feet. The power plants all use different energy types, and they all power different amounts of subsidies. So 2 coal would power 2 houses or something like that. And the more expensive the power plant, generally the more efficient it gets. After everybody has bought their first power plants, then they buy resources for those power plants. And the resources are coal, oil, trash, or radium. And coal starts most in abundance, but then later, at the end of every round, when the resources restock, coal becomes more and more rare. And so eventually at the end of the game, if people are consuming a lot of coal, you'll actually just run out of coal. But all the other resources will produce, and trash will become really popular / abundant. And so it's a very interesting game in that you're dealing with money as far as bidding and auctions, and so it's based on your players and balancing and stuff like that. Then you also have the economy of the market for resources. And this economy scales really well even for large-scale games of 6 players. There's a nice little chart on the board that says how much resources are, and the more there is of a resource, the cheaper it is. So as one resource becomes more in demand, it becomes more expensive, especially if you're the one buying last. And this is the fun part of Power Grid. In Power Grid, turn order is determined by who has the most substations built. And then if there's ties, it's whoever has the most expensive power plant. And then this is where stuff gets really cool. If you are first in the turn order, that means you get to bid on a power plant first. Then the resources and the building of the substations actually starts with the last player and goes forward. The person in last place gets to buy resources first, which means they get to buy the resources the cheapest, which means they'll drive up prices for people that are in first or just ahead of them. This is a great balancing thing because it assumes that if somebody is in first, they have more substations, which they should, and that means they're powering more cities, which means they're getting more money. So if they have to spend more money for resources because they're buying stuff that's already been bought out, it automatically balances out so they lose more money, which is great. It solves a runaway leader problem. Okay, so I've talked about the buying of the power plants somewhat, and I've talked about the resource market, which is one of my favorite things about Power Grid. Now let's talk about the map. There's a limitation to how many people can build in the cities and how you can spread once you start. So at the beginning of the game, each city will cost you $10 to settle in, and then you have to pay a connection fee to go to the next city, and you have to spread out from your own network. If you ever need to skip a city because somebody's already built there, then you have to pay a double connection fee, so you have to pay the first one and then go through again. In phase 2, it's $15 to build into a city, unless nobody's built there yet, which means it's $10. Then in phase 3, it's $20 to build into a city. So as the power companies get more powerful and start spreading, you actually run into a restriction where you maybe can't afford to spread because you're being blocked by your opponents, which is a valid strategy to block your opponents and try to cluster them, so they have to spend so much money to get out and spread. So while there's no direct competition in this game, there is still a lot of stuff that you can do to mess with your opponents. You can outbid them for power plants that you just want to raise the price on because you know they really want, or you can buy out resources, or you can even just book maps and like block them and build substations that you may not even be able to power for several turns, but you'll still be able to like block out your opponents with. The only random element in power grid is what comes up from the power plant. And because you're building on your power plant yourself, that even doesn't affect the game drastically. Like, it does enough that every play is different, but it doesn't like make it so that you will get completely screwed over if you just don't have a power plant come up. There's multiple options, you can see what's coming, and then you can bid and plan and strategize. This is enough of a randomization to make plays different, like I said, between games. But it's not enough that it makes me feel like the game is just useless. This is a solid economy game, and while yes, it has paper money, which is an instant turn-off for a lot of people, and it has a US map that looks very similar to Ticket to Ride and any other game that has a US map, it's still a great economy game, and it's a great gateway economy game. And while I generally like chunkier, more intense Euro games, Power Grid is enough of a brain burner for me to satisfies me. Like, it's not worker placement and it's not like intense braining, but it's a nice thinker of a game. I don't know. I think it works. I enjoy playing it. I'm always up for a game, and yeah, I think maybe you'll enjoy it too if you like economy games. As far as ages, I honestly don't know. I'd go with what the box recommends. So yeah, now I'm gonna continue waiting for another delayed flight because that's always what I do. That's the story of my life. If you like this video, feel free to hit the thumbs up button. If you'd like to see more, feel free to subscribe. And as always, what are you playing?
Oh, puppy!
Did you guys see the puppy? Did it get the puppy?